Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where things are awfully quiet in Hollywood. Maybe they're holding all their headlines for the upcoming July events like D23 and Comic-Con. Maybe they're just depressed because the box office hasn't been going well and they're like, who cares? Go watch your TV, everybody. Movies are going to go sulk in the corner. But anyway, there were a lot of fun headlines a couple of weeks ago, with everything that Sony was doing, and James Wan gave us a sneak peek at Mira. But this week, nothing. So I opened it up to viewer questions yesterday on Twitter. So that's what that's what today's episode is going to be. It's going to be all viewer questions. All right, so the first one is from Andrea. And Andrea said, how awesome would it be if Warner Brothers would do a prequel about Themyscira with Robin Wright and Connie Nielsen? And I believe Andrea over the weekend was tweeting this, and Connie Nielsen recognized her tweets and was like, oh yes, for sure. And Andrea, I think that's wonderful that Connie Nielsen, interacted with you in that way and was enthusiastic about it. But of course she's enthusiastic about it. What is Connie Nielsen doing these days? I'll tell you, nothing. So she would love to make a Themyscira prequel. I could maybe see it becoming a television show, like they're doing Krypton on Sci-Fi. And of course they have Gotham, which is a prequel to the Batman stories, right? So there could totally be maybe a Themyscira television series, but it would have to be pretty adult because they'd have to deal with the LGBT situation that the movie avoided. It'll be interesting to see how long they can keep that up in the movie space to avoid that conversation. But you couldn't have that you'd have to address it in a television show. And you can see that it's sometimes shows like that struggle, like Sense8, for instance, was just canceled on Netflix. Although Will and Grace is coming back, but Will and Grace, of course, is a very different type of show, which is mostly comedic. So anyway, I think that you're going to see Themyscira still be a part of the DCEU. For instance, you saw that shot in Justice League, in the very first trailer with the Amazons in battle, including Connie Nielsen, in fact. And I don't want to give too much away because I visited the Warner Brothers a lot, but you'll be seeing more of Themyscira very, very soon. In fact, maybe this year. So that's good, Andrea. And I think that Robin Wright and Connie Nielsen will continue to work in the DCEU and perhaps in even bigger ways than one might initially think for characters like, I don't think hopefully Robin Wright will get more to do and she just won't be like Perry White in, the Batman Superman movies. But I think Connie Nielsen's going to kind of be Perry White. All right, so anyway, that's my answer to your question, Andrea. TV show, maybe, but it would be tricky. In the movies, Themyscira is definitely going to remain part of the conversation and the storytelling, but I don't think they're going to go too far in that direction. All right, so next question is from Alex Gray, who says, I will insist in my question, which I think is funny. So Alex says, after Guardians Thor Ragnarok, should Fox let Dark Phoenix go full cosmic? Love from Brazil. Hello in Brazil. They're doing the Phoenix Saga, obviously, in 2018. I think it's a mistake. As much as I loved seeing Jean Grey use the Phoenix Force in Age of Apocalypse, total X-Men fan moment. I don't think the character's ready, and I don't think the groundwork has been laid appropriately. Logan worked because they took 17 years to tell that story. Now, obviously, I don't think you have to nor should take 17 years, and I don't think they can take 17 years to build up to the Phoenix. But even when you look at the original X-Men movies, the two, X1 and X2, in that teaser at the end for the Phoenix Saga, before Bryan Singer quit, and then Brett Ratner went in a totally different direction with it, although still it was a very successful movie because of the strength of that story. And I just think at that point people really liked Famke Janssen's Jean Grey. And you had 2 movies with her. They'd really built up the character. I think even more so they built up the relationship with Logan, the flirtation. So I think at the end of X2, you were like, oh no, not only were you worried about what would happen to Jean Grey, but you were like, Logan's going to be so sad. So that was a big part of it as well. They kind of girlfriend Jean Grey, but Jean Grey, I think, has always been a little bit girlfriend, and they've been only recently trying to fix that. She just got her own title. I think she's had maybe a mini-series here and there, but they launched a Jean Grey title finally. I think the character, she's tough because she's such a good girl. And that's why I think a lot of people gravitated towards Emma Frost, including Cyclops. Oh, I loved it. That affair was some of the best X-Men writing ever. Read the new X-Men line. But, if you don't sow these seeds and build the characters, these big events that happen to them just don't mean as much. But in answer to your question, Alex, I don't really think that the X-Men can go into space right now because they're not anchored enough to the Earth to go off and have that sort of an adventure. I would love to see the Shi'ar and to introduce, Lilandra, and her relationship with Xavier. I think that would all be fabulous. But I don't think they're anywhere near ready. Maybe they could be like, let's just go to space and leave Earth behind because it didn't quite work out there. I mean, maybe, but I think Sophie Turner has, I'll be curious to see how they do with the Dark Phoenix saga, but I think they have a lot of other things to worry about before they worry too much about the setting. All right, so the third question is from Jack Rooney. And Jack Rooney says, hey Grace, I love your channel. Here's my question. Once a book author signs the movie rights away for their book, how do they get involved on set? Well, Jack, you have to get involved when you sign the contract. Once you sign that contract, if it doesn't stipulate that you have to be involved in the production, you're not going to be, because Hollywood doesn't want your help. They have their own people. They want to, they have their own ideas for what they want to do with your book, probably, and so they're not going to want to. They're not going to want another cook in the kitchen, right? They have enough cooks as it is, in fact. So you would have to have your contract stipulate that you must be involved. For instance, J.K. Rowling enjoys that, and so did E.L. James on 50 Shades. That was one of the reasons that Universal ended up getting the rights to her books, because they offered her a ridiculous amount of creative control, which has really hurt the films to some degree because there's been so much fighting and struggling with Hollywood people and E.L. James. Although I think in the first film it benefited the movie tremendously, and I think the second film gets a little ridiculous because E.L. James, everybody just quit who was opposite her, and so she was just allowed to run, with her husband writing the script, just run crazy for the sequel and do whatever she wanted. And I think the movie franchise suffered for that. So you have to have it in your contract. And the only way you're going to get it in your contract is if your book is really successful and you are a name author. And the studio goes, well, I think it would benefit us if we said you were really heavily involved. Or maybe you could get a deal to write the script like Gillian Flynn did for Gone Girl, right? That's another way you can work it out. You can say, I will only sell you the rights to my book if you allow me to write the screenplay. And if your book is hot enough, they might agree to it. But if you're someone who's just starting out and you're a new author and your book was only moderately successful, just take the deal. It's very good for you as an author to have a movie or even just a deal made about your book. You become, it helps you move to the next level as a talent. And then, you can get a better deal on your next book. Nobody should ever feel they're just going to write one book. Even people who are superstar authors, oftentimes their book franchises weren't picked up until they were like 1 or 2 books in, like 2 or 3 books in. So, don't think I'm going to write one book and then become J.K. Rowling. Well, that's not the way it works. So you'll just do better on your next book if you don't love the deal that, you get the best deal you can at the time. Remember that advice from J. Michael Straczynski about signing contracts. You sign the best contract you can at the time. And you can't go back and be like, oh, now I'm more successful, I'm going to go back in time and renegotiate contracts. No, it's a journey, it's a path, and the deals early on in your career aren't going to be as good as the ones later on when you have more leverage. It's all about just keeping your career alive and moving forward in the beginning. All right, so the final viewer question comes from Cake Batter, aka Scorched Pancake, great name. And Scorched Pancake has a very serious question, actually, for being named Scorched Pancake. And Scorched Pancake says, how are budgets for movies set, and what happens if a film goes over budget? Everybody gets fired. No, of course not. Obviously, films go over budget all the time, and I think there should be more consequences if you don't bring your film in on budget, right? Although Dan Aykroyd sure took Paul Feig to the tool shed recently in the press for making Ghostbusters too expensive. He said, we told them we needed these scenes. He said no. Then they tested it. They needed the scenes. Tested it means they played it for a test audience and said, did you like it? And the test audience obviously said, not too much. So they had to go back and shoot the scenes that Dan Aykroyd had wanted in there originally. And he said that has $30 to $40 million more in the budget because reshoots are expensive. You have to remobilize the whole crew, etc. So yeah, I think that when films do go over budget, I think there should be serious ramifications. I'd be like, it's coming partially out of your salary, quite frankly. Or, I'm going to take away some of your back end points because this is ridiculous. But anyway, A budget is set for a movie based on a couple of different things. How much money is available, right? Particularly when you're talking about small films, right? What can you realistically make the movie on, right? How much can you get investors to do? And when you're actually putting a movie together, you get somebody who's called, I believe, I think it's a line producer. No, it's a unit production manager, I think is the correct term, a UPM. And what that person does is they will go through your script and they will make a budget based on what they think, how many shooting days you need. They'll decide when the actors are needed, and they'll have to decide, okay, well, if I need an actor for so many days, do I have a trailer for them? Do I need a hotel room for them? How about food, transportation, light packaging, camera equipment, all of that. And a very detailed budget is made based on the script. And a unit production manager is a professional who's able to vouch for that and is able to say, I think this is realistically what the movie would cost. And then, that's for like small films, right? But if you want to make a really big movie, then of course you have to factor in the visual effects costs. I think, UPM will know whether or not they have to do like the bare bones budget or like the idealized budget. Maybe they do somewhere in between, right? So that's how they decide how much a movie should cost, right? And then of course you have to factor in for these big movies the salaries for talent sometimes, which can go up to like $20 million a picture. So, and then you have to decide how important it is for you to have said talent in your movie. Are they worth the $20 million? So that's how a budget is set. Now, if a film goes over budget, it'll go over budget if there's a problem shooting, like for instance, Johnny Depp decides to have a nervous breakdown and not show up. That's a big problem. And sometimes they'll need reshoots. They'll be like, what, I'd rather spend a couple tens of millions of dollars now than have this be a horrible flop, right? I mean, look at Rogue One. Definitely worth the investment of the reshoots to fix that movie. So sometimes, I guess, sometimes it just doesn't work out. But I think that it should be remembered. I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, I'm glad it worked out, but I'm not, fool me once, Gareth Edwards, fool me twice, though, shame on me. And I think that the once was Godzilla, and then Rogue One was the second shaming, and if anybody ever hires Gareth Edwards again, I'd be very surprised. So, I don't actually think he has any films in development, come to think of it. And he shouldn't, to be perfectly honest with you. He's 0 for 2. Tony Gilroy really bailed him out there. So I think with reshoots, it's okay for a film to go over budget. So those are basically the ways it goes over budget. Reshoots are there's a problem on set and you're like, we just have to spend more money and we're stuck. And that's a big point of contention between the producers and the filmmakers and the studio. And that's why studios have somebody who's a representative who oversees films for them and keeps an eye on the film from the studio's perspective and what benefits them the most, saying, well, we have to watch our bottom line, we have to make sure you're on schedule so you can make your release date, etc. So it's very much it's a business effort. It's very much a business effort. These things are meticulously planned, but then of course when you're dealing with creativity and creative individuals, sometimes things don't go to plan. So I hope that answers your question. It's a complicated question, a complicated answer to your question, but I think that's a good answer to start with. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you guys for some really interesting viewer questions. Write down below your thoughts on the questions of the day and my answers to them. Anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and of course, as always, any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.